Hey everybody! We are back for another Tips and Tools Tuesday with this week PCA's Kelly Kratz. She is going to be talking to our community about the best way to handle mistakes, whether that's on the field when we get back to playing, at home, and all the different things that come along with that topic. And so, as you're tuning in, we hope that you will chat in your own questions, share with us where you are watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And again, if you have any other questions, whether that's about mistakes or another topic, Kelly is an expert. She has been a Positive Coaching Alliance trainer since 2009. She's led who knows how many workshops for PCA all across the country. She's currently in the Philadelphia area. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so we're super excited to have all of you joining us. And again, we hope that you will interact, ask us questions, and let us know where you're watching from. So I am going to kick it over to Kelly, who's going to kick it off to talk about dealing with mistakes. So thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thanks, Casey. I love being known as the expert on mistakes. That's definitely a title I have not had before, and I will gladly take it because I think I've made enough to honor that title. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is really exciting because the idea of handling mistakes is so relevant right now. And I'm telling you that again, as I did a couple weeks ago, as a parent, I really understand what a lot of you are going through. I have 4 kids of my own that are home now, and all of the roles that you're now forced to play, not only parent, but now teacher and phys ed teacher and music teacher and sports coach and all of these things that have been put into your role now. Wow, there's so many opportunities. I know that I have made so many mistakes so far in this quarantine period, and your kids are going to be learning things, and you might not be able to help them through how to teach them how to do it. So this is a perfect time to talk about mistakes. As Casey said, I'm going to be talking a little bit to you as coaches, because if you're tuning in, I have a feeling that a lot of you are coaches, but also as parents, because I think, again, all of our principles that we do in positive coaching can go for coaches and parents, and we can all become better at whatever we're doing. So, Casey, to start off, I just wanted to kind of talk about when we talk about mistakes in a PCA workshop, a lot of the times coaches say, well, there's different types of mistakes. When we're coaching, we've got mental mistakes and repeated mistakes and physical mistakes and lack of effort mistakes. And, then there's mistakes by, a player disrespects an official or does something that's totally against the culture, and they call that a mistake. Well, just to kind of clarify, at PCA, mistakes are mistakes. Physical mistakes are the same as mental mistakes, and we treat them the same way. We've had a lot of coaches say, well, I can understand if my players miss a shot or they do a technique a certain way, but mental mistakes are unexcusable. Well, we believe mental mistakes should be treated exactly the same way. The other thing is a lot of mistakes are caused by lack of effort or lack of paying attention, and you have to kind of ask yourself why. We're going to be doing that a lot today. That's one of the things I've learned most, I think, about handling mistakes is instead of putting the blame on the players or on my kids, is saying, okay, what can I do better? How can I help explain this better? Or maybe I'm not really understanding where the kids and the players are coming from. So that's another one. The last thing I'm going to say before we jump on is that we do not consider disrespect in any way a mistake. So if a player says, oh, coach, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell at my teammate or berate them when they made a mistake, that's not a mistake. Okay, we consider that disrespect, and that's in a whole nother category that we call honoring the game. So we don't believe that's countercultural, and that's going to just degrade the whole positive culture you're trying to make on your team. Don't take it from your players. Don't take it from your own kids. So those are just the differences in mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a super helpful way to set the ground. And just want to call out Danny from Ellensburg, Washington, Stuart from New Zealand. Hello,
Wow,
Stuart from
cool.
New Zealand. Thanks for watching. Emily Ogden is watching, Brandon Wald from Toronto, Jennifer from Redmond, Washington, Tyler Heffernan. Hi, Tyler. If you guys are tuning in, again, we're here with Kelly Kratz, PCA's expert on many topics, but today we're talking about handling mistakes, the types of mistakes, and helping parents and coaches help their athletes deal with that. So if you're tuning in, please comment in any questions you have specific to dealing with mistakes at home or with your team, and we will get to your questions. But let's talk about maybe how athletes and maybe your kids, if you're at home, respond to mistakes and what coaches and parents can learn from that.
Thanks, Casey. So yeah, I think first of all, it's an idea. It's thinking about why are they responding the way that they are. So if we're talking about athletes, you've got different levels, little kids all the way up through college level. And when a blatant mistake happens on the field of play, whatever it is, field, pool, court, whatever you're doing, the way that your athlete reacts to that can give you a lot of information. So we've seen everything from kids, slamming their head down, throwing a stick, literally having a physical tantrum on the field or the court, just beating themselves up. And that is information that you can gain as a coach or even as a parent sitting there watching going, okay, it's a game. Why is my child flipping out like that? Or why is the player flipping out like that? So I think as a coach, sometimes it really goes back to the culture that you're creating. We all know, well, I shouldn't say we all know, this is something we all want you to know, that fear of mistakes is detrimental to performance. That is the number one impediment to peak performance, is fear of making a mistake. Not the mistakes itself, but the fear of making it. So as coaches, to have the best performance from our athletes and the best environment is to make sure that we eradicate that fear of mistakes. So how do we eradicate that fear of mistakes? We encourage them. We encourage mistakes to be happening. And when teams are not afraid to make mistakes, they're going to take risks. They're going to try things. They're not going to be scared and timid and afraid to move and afraid to do things. So I think you can probably think back to your own youth coaching experience or your own youth athlete experience, to coaches that you've played for. And as soon as you made a mistake or you made a foul or an error, you would tense up. And you might look over and think, oh my gosh, my coach is going to take me out, or my coach is, you're scared. Okay, that tensing, if you think about it, I'm not going to play well for the next play. Or you may have played for other coaches that as soon as you've made that mistake, your coach is like, all right, come on, keep going. Let's go. Next play. Get ready for the next play. Get your head back in the game. Let's go. And you can probably feel yourself tense up when you picture one coach, and you can feel yourself relax just thinking about it. I'm sure, Casey, you felt that too, when you've probably played for plenty of coaches that made you tense up when you made a mistake, and ones that encouraged you, like, hey, it's okay. Love how you tried that shot you've never done before.
Right. I mean, it's pretty special when you do make a mistake on the court or the field and you look over and you can see your coach saying, hey, next play, brush it off, something like that to get you to reset and focus on the next play. So, yeah, I love that. And it sounds like Jim from Malvern has joined us. Evan from Maine, thanks for tuning in. Renee and Kirkland. Brian Virtue is on. And so thank you. It looks like there's quite a few here on the live watching this session with Kelly Kratz. So again, we're talking about handling mistakes, overcoming mistakes, creating a culture of encouraging mistakes. And so definitely encourage you all to, write in if you have experience with any tips or tricks that you've had with your athletes or your kids in terms of helping kind of overcome that mindset. Would love to hear about them on the chat. We're following along. So yeah, let's talk about, reinforcing and encouraging the culture of making mistakes. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy. It sounds sort of like, why would I want my kid to make lots of mistakes? I had a coach one time that said the team that makes the most mistakes wins. And I always thought that was crazy, but she said, field hockey is really a game of mistakes. If there were no mistakes made, the same team would have possession the entire game. So every time the ball, I played a lot of stick and ball sports, every time a mistake is made, the other team gets possession, and then it's another opportunity. So most of us as adults realize that some of the greatest lessons we ever learned in life were in mistakes that we made. And the only time a mistake is a failure is when you don't learn from it. I was just talking to Casey about this prior to this call, that I had the opportunity a few years back to interview Billie Jean King. And one thing that she said to me that I'll never forget, she said, whenever I made a mistake, I would file the part to learn from and delete the other part. And she joked about it because she said, this was even before computers were a big thing. I said, I'm going to file it in my brain, the part to learn, and delete the rest. So we're not telling kids to just forget about the mistake. As Casey said, this whole, we call them mistake rituals. We're going to talk about them in a little bit, like brush it off, move on, flush it, move on to the next play. That is part of moving on mentally. But we also want kids to know that mistakes are opportunities to learn. So we're talking about things you can do as coaches and things you can also do as parents. And one of the things we bring up at our workshops a lot is the car ride home. And when you have a player that made a glaring mistake during a game and it could have cost the game, or maybe the player was taken out for the rest of the game, and you're a parent and you're sitting in that driver's seat on the way home, and you know that your kid is the reason, the end reason, I should say, not the full reason, of course, but the reason that your team might have lost in that moment, what do you say? And that's where it's a chance, parents, for you to shine and let your kids take the lead. Let your kids decide if they want to talk about it or not. Let them bring it up, because they might have already gotten over it, and then you're as a parent going, oh, how do you feel? That was a tough one at the end of the game. And the kid's like, wait, my coach already talked to me. I'm already over it. So, but just encouraging the response to the mistake. Hey, you know what? I love how you kept your head up in that. That was awesome. You had 10 more minutes to play. You played like a crazy person out there. Your effort was amazing. I love that. I love, even when you sat on the bench, how loud and encouraging you were to the sub that went in for you. That's what I want to see. That's awesome. So that's what we were talking about before we move on to the next one, Casey, about encouraging mistakes, not encouraging them necessarily to make them, but really be encouraging and positive on their response to it. How do they bounce back? What do they do in the next few moments?
Absolutely. Yeah, I see a lot of hearts coming across the screen, so people are liking what you're saying. I saw Marty rejoin, and then Brad Ethan made a comment, being relentless in everything they do, even when making mistakes, they happen, and it's about fixing them and learning from it. So absolutely. I encourage all of you who are just tuning in, we're here live with Kelly Kratz, PCA trainer since 2009. She's currently in Philadelphia. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we'd love to get some questions from you all, whether it's on mistakes or another topic. And Maggie Hatcher says hi from Chicago. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
So you mentioned, encouraging mistakes or at least, encouraging them to learn when they do happen, and talk about, I know one of our favorite people involved with PCA and our National Advisory Board is Carol Dweck, and her research around the growth versus fixed mindset. So can you talk a little bit about the growth mindset and how that kind of plays into the culture of making mistakes and how you can overcome them?
Absolutely. I think understanding a growth mindset is a game changer. And it was a game changer for me as a parent. I was also a teacher. Totally changed my perspective on everything. I think for myself included, realizing the things that I had a fixed mindset being I'm either good at that or I'm not. And that was something that I was just brought up. I think a lot of us in my generation were brought up that, things had to be perfect. I didn't have as many coaches that allowed mistakes. So it was, if you were perfect, you started the game. If you were not perfect, you would not get the A. And so I find a lot more coaches these days are a lot more forgiving and understand the value of mistakes. But having a growth mindset means that you completely understand that to get better, it's about growth and it's about effort and it's about your attitude. But one more part of it is also about getting coaching and learning from what you're doing. So one of the things that I love about Dr. Dweck, and I've seen her a few times, she's our national, as Casey said, she was even honored a few years back and given our Lifetime Achievement Award because her research is so monumental for everyone, parents, athletes, students, just to understand this mindset of really believing that you can get better. And the belief that a coach has that a player can get better is so powerful. Even if the player doesn't believe it themselves, if a coach believes a player can do something, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're the kind of kid that can do it. The kid's like, yes, coach, put me in, I'm ready. And so this is something that changed the way I parent, changed the way I coach. I was, raising my kids when they were little in the late 90s, early 2000s, when everything was supposed to be positive. So I was telling my oldest daughter, wow, you're so fast. You're such a great artist. You're the best dancer. Wow, I can't believe how well you ate your lunch. Everything was just out of her control. It was just, you're great, you're wonderful, you're positive. And that works to a certain point, but I was trying to hand my daughter confidence rather than praising her for the effort. Gosh, you really ran that race fast. You've been practicing so much, I can tell. Or you have been making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the past 2 weeks, and this is the most delicious one I've seen you make yet. Or, I love the way you're constantly coloring in the back of the car, and I can tell the color choices are just really unique. Things like that she's in control of. I'm praising her effort, and I'm praising the process. I'm not just saying, you're fast, you're smart, you're good, you're happy. So that's why I always joke that's why I have 4 kids, so that when I messed up the first one, I have 3 others, 3 others behind that I can work on. But it's this quick idea of the power of just saying the word yet. If they can't do it, if your child says, I can't do it, it's they can't do it yet. And that is something that, I say all the time to my players and to my own kids, that you can't do it. What? If my kids say, I can't do this. My daughter was doing 7th grade math the other day. She's like, I just can't do this. And I say, you can't do it what? She's like, I can't do it yet. And it's such a simple concept, and it just changes their mindset right away.
I love that. And the part about truthful and specific, right? Not just saying, good job, you're awesome, way to go. Actually picking out things that they're in control of that really acknowledge the effort that they're putting in. So we had a couple questions come in. It sounds like Javier from Mexico is watching. Javier, thanks for watching from there. John in Georgia, thank you so much for watching. Brandon Wald wrote in and is wondering, what do you do with an athlete that turns mistakes into bad body language? So again, kind of the body language response to an athlete that, or from an athlete that makes a mistake. Any advice for dealing with that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great, again, it's information. And I'm glad he brought that up. Like when an athlete has bad body language, that is information right away that they're not handling this mistake well. And one of the things that I think are really helpful as coaches is to allow kids to be mad at themselves for a second. Like you made a mistake. It was an expectation that wasn't met. So it's okay to be bummed. But if you give them the expectation to your whole team, hey guys, I know this is how we're going to handle mistakes, and you teach them a positive way to channel those emotions, it can really help. So maybe the reason that a player has bad body language, I'm not exactly sure what he means, but I'm assuming it's, head down or, smacking your fist or something like that, that definitely the posture that you don't want them in for the next play. We teach a mistake ritual, and it's something that we didn't make up. We've actually borrowed it from pro teams all over the place, pro and college players that say, I have a physical sign that I use to trigger a mental reset. So the physicality of the sign is really important. So one that's super simple that probably a lot of you have heard of is the flush. And we encourage coaches to teach their players at any level. There are pro teams that use the flush. So it's not something just for, 4-year-old boy soccer. And we teach them literally take your hands and flush a toilet. And this motion can be a trigger to mentally reset and get ready for the next play. Or brush it off, as you said, Casey. Or a lot of times, like I coach girls, they always have the rubber bands on their wrist, snap out of it, clap. I coach lacrosse. A lot of times I'll have the girls put their stick up in the air. My team says a lot of flush it a lot to get on from the mistake and move on. I was the kind of player that I used to just clap 3 times when I made a mistake. And the first clap was, yeah, like beating myself, like, oh, I can't believe you did that. The second one was, all right, next time, this is what I'm going to do in my head. And then the third time is like, all right, let's go back in the game. And that was my mistake ritual. I never knew it was called a mistake ritual, but that's what I always did through college was my 3 claps, got myself ready to go back in the game. So I
love that. I haven't heard the 3 claps before. That's awesome. Brandon, I hope that helped. And that was a great question. I think that, others can benefit from as well. And Brady Ethan said, I tell my team, throw it away, next play. So that was totally. John Rainwater III says a big problem is when coaches talk about the athlete being wrong instead of correcting the mistake. Yes. Remind our athletes that practice is a great place to make full speed mistakes to eliminate full speed game mistakes. So, maybe talk a little bit about that, just in terms of the way coaches can kind of reframe when a mistake is made rather than just like, hey, that wasn't good.
Right.
How can you kind of coach them to improve?
Right. And I think the first step, and this is what helped me a lot in my coaching, I've been coaching for 25 years, and I don't think it was until about 10 years ago that I actually learned how to coach. And just because you're a good athlete doesn't mean you're automatically a good coach, because you take a lot of that athlete baggage with you when you coach, and you sort of emulate the coaches that you had, whether it was good or bad. This is what the coaches did for me. So I think a good point of that is the way that you look at mistakes is the way your athletes are going to look at mistakes. So clear the trash out of your brain first to make sure that you're focusing on mistakes as learning opportunities, and that especially when you're teaching new skills to players, there are going to be tons of mistakes, and encourage them. One of the things that I started doing, especially with my youth teams, is that I coach lacrosse right now. So if I'm teaching them, okay, we're going to be throwing with our non-dominant hand, or we're going to be trying, even some fun stuff like behind the back shots, I'll throw in something that I know is super challenging so that even some of the most skilled players are going to be making mistakes. And I'll encourage them, we'll be clapping, we'll be practicing the flush in practice. I'll bring them in for the huddle and I'll say, okay, everybody tell me a mistake that you just made there. And they'll just go around the circle. And, when kids aren't afraid to admit that they made mistakes, or even if it's a scrimmage or a drill, all right, tell me 4 mistakes that were made on offense there, something that you did. And then we'll stop and say, now tell me what you learned from it. Now tell me what you do next time. So I'm intentionally teaching them the brain power to say, I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to move past it. And saying that out loud at practice, well, eventually it'll start happening in their own brain. So I don't need to be there saying, Casey, tell me the mistake you made, tell me what you learned, and tell me how you're going to move on from it. They just will automatically get it. So I think the culture that you set and the tone that you set, mistakes are opportunities. And again, they don't always have to be mistakes. As he said, it's not wrong. Sometimes it's just a little correction. And that's where we use a lot of if-then statements. I think I brought this up 2 weeks ago. If you explain, if you put your hand this way, or if you don't breathe in the red zone, or if you keep your arms pumping this way, whatever the if, then you'll be more likely to work on, the skill will be better, the shot will be harder, the kick will be stronger. So using that type of language is much better than, you're not doing it right, come here, let me show you again. Let me pull you out. I've already went over this, but I'm going to explain it again. Just your language as a coach can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and we can definitely follow up on this chat too and share some of our links that go into if-then statements and the growth mindset and truthful and specific praise in more detail, so that you guys can read up on that post this session. So Johnny from Ballgame Cyclones, I'll definitely get to your question. Just want to encourage anybody else. We'll be on here for about another 8 minutes. So if anybody has questions that they want to ask for Kelly while we have her here, please do chat those in. Johnny was wondering, what do you do when players look in the stands for parent approval? I'm sure this is something that others can relate to who are watching this. So any thoughts on that, Kelly?
Yeah, for sure. We always joke that, when players are under the age of 14 and they make a glaring mistake, the first thing they do is look up at parents. When they're over 14, the first thing they do is look at coach. And that was studied somewhere along the line. But another reason for coaches to start every season with a parent meeting and just make parents aware. We do positive coaching parent workshops, which are so valuable and important. And not even just the content that we're sharing with them and the principles, but the aha moments that parents have when we talk about how important nonverbals are. And when your kids look at you in the stands and you have this face like, oh, man, if you just made a mistake and you look up and you see mom like this in the stands, what does that do to a kid? So we encourage all coaches to have a parent meeting at the beginning of the season, and the parents are part of your team. So we want the parents to help on board and just explaining to them, hey, I need your help, parents. This is the way I'm going to be teaching your kids to handle mistakes, and I need you to be on the same page. And we also have to remember that we as adults know a lot more about the sport than the kids you're coaching. Parents might know a lot more about the sport than than their own child. Parents might know nothing about the sport and think that they do. So we really encourage you coaches to explain to parents, stop coaching from the sidelines, because it's very, very confusing. If you have a coaching tip or you want to be a coach, jump on board, help me out, volunteer. But coaching from the sidelines has been proven multiple times to do nothing but damage and be confusing. Now, encouraging from the sidelines, praising how kids respond after mistakes, way to get back, way to get the ball back, way to get your head back in the game. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want from parents. But remote controlling your kids and telling them where to go on the sidelines does nothing but damage, and it's very, very confusing. Coming from parent and coach.
Yep, exactly. Lots of likes going up across the screen when you were talking about that. So definitely a hot topic. And Johnny, that was a great question. Jennifer wrote in, be where your feet are. If you lose the ball and get back on defense, be thinking about where your feet are, playing good defense, not on where they were. For example, the mistake. So focusing on the next play, thinking about where your feet are. That was a great comment, Jennifer. Want to go over a couple of specific tools potentially that parents and coaches can use. One of which is rewarding unsuccessful effort. And so want to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, again, if you're just tuning in now here for the last few minutes of this live session, chat in where you're watching from. Let us know if you have any questions. And also just want to reiterate, we're doing this every Tuesday with either Kelly or Ruben Nieves, who was on last Tuesday, you may have seen. So definitely join us every Tuesday around 12 or 12:30. So but yeah, let's talk about rewarding unsuccessful effort.
Yeah, so that's one of the tools that we use in PCA, and I never really love that phrase because I don't think any effort is necessarily unsuccessful, but that's my own little beef. But I think the idea is to reward what you want to see. If you want to see your kids give more effort in anything from parents having your kids make the bed to coaches getting your kids to run 2 miles, whatever it is, reward the effort that you want to see regardless of how it turns out at the end. And this is so crucial because we always say as coaches, we want best effort. We want best effort in everything they do. Yet I see coaches all the time just rewarding the shot that went in or the shot that didn't go in. Or did the ball drop or did the ball stay in? Or did they win the race or did they get faster? Sometimes when you introduce a new skill to a group of athletes, they're going to go slower. They're going to fail a lot before they progress. And that's something that kids need to understand. And so one of our National Advisory Board members, Graham Betchart, he talks a lot about praising the moment, praising those mistake moments. It almost seems weird to praise the mistake moments, but look for those mistake moments and really encourage the resilience, like, wow, I saw you get your head right back in there. That was awesome. Don't even mention the fact that they made the mistake, because if an athlete makes a mistake, they're going to know it. They don't need to hear it through a megaphone. They know they made the mistake. So that would be my suggestion for the rewarding of unsuccessful effort. You're going to see more effort because that's what you want to see.
Yep, totally. And then one other, and we talked a little bit about mistake rituals earlier, just in terms of a physical gesture to help your athlete or yourself, move on to the next play, but we haven't quite touched on parking mistakes and kind of the terminology of how coaches and parents might be able to use that phrase when working with their athletes or their kids around mistakes.
Yeah. So what we always talk about too is avoiding non-teachable moments. And this is important for parents and for kids. We want any knowledge and correction that we have for kids to be received. So right after a player makes a mistake is not the time to go into the details and technique of how they screwed that up so much. So we talk about non-teachable moments. So there might be a time, most coaches have a clipboard or somewhere to write something down. If you saw a player make a mistake that is a skill that we've gone over a few times, or maybe it was just a technique change, parking it means just write it down on something and save it for later. Save it for a time when emotions are not running high or there's not a lot of pressure going on, and just maybe bring it up at practice the next day, or have a casual conversation as you're leaving the game or you're leaving the practice and say, hey, do you mind if I ask you, I just was wondering, I saw you do this in the game and I'd like to talk to you about it. Okay, asking permission will let you know the player's ready to hear what you have to say. So parents, try it out also. If your kid is like breaking pencils over their math homework right now because they can't get something, sometimes just calm them down, have them talk about something completely different. And again, players, we say, get coaching from somebody else. It's great for parents too, to just say, you know what, it's okay. I don't know how to do this. Or my kids would always say, well, Mom, you're teaching me how to do this completely different than Mrs. Jones is, and I've got to learn to flush it sometimes so that I don't get angry. Parents have to flush it. Coaches flush it all the time. I made a mistake. Admit that to your kids. Be the example. Model what you want to see. So model for your kids the times where you make mistakes, because they want to see you recover from it, not to have you have bad body language and sit there and get upset about it.
Amazing tips. Thank you all so much for tuning in on this Tuesday afternoon for this week's tips and tools with Kelly Kratz on handling mistakes. We'll definitely follow up again with some specific resources that people can click on and read and share with their communities. And also just want to share too, during this unprecedented time with people home now more than ever, PCA has opened up our athlete course at no cost for any athlete to take. It's a 60-minute interactive course. We'll chat the link in our comment section so that if you're interested in learning more about taking the course or having your team take the course, please do. We also have a discussion guide that goes along with it so that if your team takes it virtually, you can come back and discuss it as a group, the next week. So we hope you find those resources valuable. And we'll continue to do Facebook Lives every week. Would love to hear any feedback. Chat it in the comments, message PCA. We're here for you. We will get through this time together. And Kelly, thank you again for providing these tools that will help now. And then also when we get back on the playing field, sports is going to come back. So this hopefully will help everyone once we get back there. So thank you so much, Kelly. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.